Coming up, we look at the upcoming Windows Server 2019, from major advances in managing hyper-converged infrastructure, support for storage class memory, as well as deduplication coming to REFS, new hybrid integration between Windows Server Data Center and Azure with the Windows Admin Center, to security enhancements including support for Linux shielded VMs, and more. So I'm joined again today by Jeff Woolsey. Welcome.
Hey, it's great to be back.
So each time we have on the show, things always seem to get better, and we've seen some important Windows Server milestones from the work done in Windows Server 2016, followed by the semi-annual channel releases, version 1709 and 1803, to optimize containers on Windows Server with Nano Server and Server Core, the new Windows subsystem for Linux, and of course, Project Honolulu, now officially named the Windows Admin Center for local, cloud, and remote server management. But how do things evolve further in Windows Server 2019?
Well, with Windows Server 2019, we're continuing our commitment to hybrid integration based on your feedback. We know that many of you are focused on integrating your on-premises data centers with the cloud. So whether you're running Windows Server in Azure or on-premises in Azure Stack, or using a Windows Server software-defined solution on-premises, we want to give you consistency throughout.
Now, recently we've talked about the long-term servicing channel releases and semi-annual channel release, but what category does Windows Server 2019 fall into?
Windows Server 2019 is our next big release that uses the long-term servicing channel, or LTSC. Remember, the LTSC is great for traditional apps like SQL Server, Exchange, SharePoint, and SAP. It's also great for hyper-converged infrastructure and comes with 5 years mainstream support and 5 years of extended support. Windows Server 2019 includes all the innovation we delivered in the semi-annual channel releases, which occurred after Windows Server 2016, and brings it to the LTSC. This means Windows Server 2019 is a great release for both application innovation and traditional deployments. And of course, we're focused on hyper-converged with hybrid integration, where we're simplifying management with Windows Admin Center and enabling easy integration with Azure.
Now that sounds awesome. Lots of improvements across a number of areas there, especially when it comes to hyper-converged, which I know managing this type of configuration has been a pain point for a lot of people. So what are we doing there?
Well, hyper-converged is a big area of focus for us. If you look back 5 years or more, you'd start with building a rack, and that would start with servers. Then you'd buy a storage solution and configure iSCSI or Fiber Channel storage fabric, which also meant purchasing Fiber Channel switches. Next, you'd probably buy some network appliances like gateways, firewalls, load balancers, VPNs, and add a top-of-rack switch. With hyper-converged infrastructure, we create an elegant solution using mainstream servers, Ethernet switches, and software. Here you can see servers populated with local, fast storage attached via standard Ethernet, coupled with the magic of software-defined compute, storage, and networking, which provides those same capabilities in a smaller footprint at a lower cost and delivered as a certified, validated Windows Server software-defined solution.
So do we have to wait for Windows Server 2019 to take advantage of this?
Oh, definitely not. WSSD solutions are popular and they're available today, right now. And if you're interested, you can check out the WSSD page and choose a hyper-converged solution from the dozens of options available for Windows Server 2016. And of course, our partners are already working with us on Windows Server 2019 solutions and the new features we're introducing there.
Nice. So what are some of those new features we've added?
Well, let's start with storage. Windows Server has included granular block-based deduplication since Server 2012. With block-based deduplication, a file is divided into smaller blocks and checksummed into chunks, and identical chunks with the same checksum are stored only once. Because block-based deduplication goes sub-file, it's very efficient as opposed to file-based deduplication, which generally just looks at the file name, date, and size. Now, previously, Windows Server deduplication has been limited to NTFS formatted volumes. Well, no more. Windows Server 2019 brings deduplication to REFS formatted volumes. Nice. So let me give you a quick demo here with Windows Admin Center.
Sounds good.
Here we have a setup, a cluster shared volume, C:\cluster storage. And you can see there are two folders, one here with deduplication enabled and one without. Let's start by taking a look inside the folder with deduplication. Here you can see it's filled with a variety of data types. Now, we know from deep interactions with our customers that these are all very common, and there's a very good chance your storage looks pretty similar. Here we have SQL databases, websites, and about 20 virtual hard disks. HyperVVM is varying in size from 7 to 20 gigabytes each. Now, Let's also compare this with the other folder. Let's go to the one without deduplication. Again, here we have SQL databases, websites, and again, 20 virtual hard disks for VMs varying in size from 7 to 20 gigabytes each. You can see it's an exact copy. Now, let's switch from the single view of Server Manager to the hyper-converged cluster manager, where we get a view of everything in this cluster. Now here we can see in the volume view, let's take a look at the inventory view. And notice immediately the red alert by the volume not using dedupe, while the one using dedupe is just fine. You'll notice that both volumes are formatted with REFS, both using three-way mirror resiliency, and both volumes are the same size. If you look at the storage usage, you can see that the volume not using dedupe is 92% full, and the reason for the red alert. Let's click on the volume and get further details. Here you can see, if I click to view details, there's further information and a suggestion to resize the volume, delete unwanted files, or move files to another volume. Now, let's close this, and let's take a detailed look at the dedupe volume. So again, this volume is exactly the same as the other one, except this one is using Windows Server's awesome block-based deduplication. You can see all here is good. Here's the path, and in fact, you can see that only 5% of storage is used. Look at all of that free space. And of course, for the folks that want to take a look at PowerShell, for our PowerShell fans, you can type get dedupe volume and see the 94% savings rate. Just like that.
Awesome stuff, Jeff. There's some incredible savings there. And what I'm seeing is that Windows Server 2019 really does provide the best of all worlds. Efficiency, resiliency, performance, and deduplication all built in, which is impressive in itself. But is there more with storage?
Oh, yes, a lot more. Now, over the past few years, we've seen the growth of flash storage everywhere. In addition, flash has gotten faster. And to do that, the industry has had to change the way flash connects to your computer. First, flash was connected via USB. Then USB got too slow. So flash was connected via SATA and SAS, and those interfaces got too slow. Next, PCI was used, and then a whole new connection was created called NVMe.
And NVMe stands for Non-Volatile Memory Express, which is currently the fastest flash-based storage available.
That's right, that's the current fastest flash-based available. Each time we change the connection, though, and we're moving the flash closer and closer to the processor, we're doing this to reduce latency and increase performance. Now we have memory that plugs into a memory socket, a DIMM socket, sitting right next to the processor called storage class memory. Storage class memory can be configured to look like memory, it can be treated like an insanely fast storage device, or it can even be segmented to do both based on the use case. For hyper-converged infrastructure, storage class memory can be used as an intelligent cache for storage spaces direct to reduce latency and drive up performance to new heights.
So using storage class memory to reduce latency, drive up storage performance all sounds great, but doesn't that add extra stress to the networking layer to keep up?
You're absolutely right. And in a hyper-converged environment, when a write to storage happens, one storage write occurs locally and two writes occur remotely to two other nodes synchronously. This means that the CPU has to perform these writes, which can easily consume 2 cores on a 10 gigabit network, or 8 cores on a 40 gigabit network. That's why we prepared for this 6 years ago by investing in Remote Direct Memory Access, or RDMA. RDMA allows us to perform this operation using RDMA-enabled network adapters, thus freeing up CPU cores for doing actual work. With flash spreading everywhere and now to the DIMM socket, you need to have RDMA to keep up. Windows Server RDMA leads the industry supporting 10, 40, 50, and 100 gigabit Ethernet today. And we're already testing, get this, Matt, 400 gigabit Ethernet, and we're working with the industry to enable 1,000 gigabit Ethernet, or 1 terabit, with RDMA.
Wow, 1 terabit networking sounds amazing. Now, let's switch gears, though, to management. How easy is it to manage a hyper-converged cluster?
I got 3 words for you. Windows Admin Center. Windows Admin Center, formerly Project Honolulu, is the future of Windows Server management, and we're investing heavily here. Let's take a look at Windows Admin Center in action. Let's start by taking a look at the Hyper-Converged Cluster Manager dashboard. Here you can see an overall view of the HCI cluster we've deployed. I see alerts and the overall cluster storage. So you can see here the cluster performance in terms of IOPS, in terms of latency and throughput. And again, keep in mind this is for the entire cluster. Here you can see 670,000 IOPS, 51 microseconds latency, throughput of 2.6 gigabytes per second. Also, notice that we maintain historical data, so I can click on day to see the last 24 hours and look for any interesting peaks and valleys. You can also specify the past week, month, even up to a year. Next, if I want to see the overall resource utilization for the HCI cluster and see CPU usage, I can see that. I can see memory usage and storage capacity, again, for the entire cluster. Notice how you can quickly ascertain your resource usage at a glance. Next, I can see the server health for all 3 nodes in this HCI cluster and that they're healthy, including all 18 drives in this HCI cluster, 6 drives per node, a total of 17 virtual machines, 14 of them are running, and of course I have 2 volumes here. One of them is critical, one of them is warning, with a total of 12. So you can see all of this very quickly at a glance with the hyper-converged cluster manager.
That's cool stuff. And what you just showed was an overall view of the cluster, but can we see an overall view of virtual machine and host resources?
Yes, in fact, let me show you that as well. So here, let's switch to the HyperVVM Summary view running on this hyper-converged infrastructure. If we click on virtual machines and zoom in, you can see there are, in fact, 26 total VMs, 21 are running, 2 of them are paused, and 3 are off. If you want to take a look at the resource usage, you can see a breakdown of CPU resource usage by host and guest. We also do the same thing for memory. So you can click on over here to memory, and we can get the breakdown by host and guest memory as well. And of course, we can look at below and we see the overall performance metrics for IOPS and throughput, again, for all of the virtual machines below.
What I like there is it's so easy to see which VMs are consuming the most resources, but what about a detailed virtual machine view and operations like live migration? How can I do those kind of things?
So let's take a look at the Hyper-V inventory view along with live migration running on this hyper-converged infrastructure. Here you can see we clicked on the inventory and we have a complete list of all the virtual machines running across the entire hyper-converged infrastructure. Again, this isn't a single server view. This is a view of VMs running across the entire cluster. You can see the current state of the VM, if it's running, paused, or stopped. You can see the name of the host server. You can see if the VM is clustered for high availability. You can see memory usage and more. You can perform actions like starting, stopping, pausing. If you want to take a checkpoint of a VM, go to the More items and you can take a checkpoint. If you want to live migrate or move a VM, select the target and click Move. It's just that easy. And just like that, I'm live migrating a VM from node 24 to node 27. You can see this informational message that the process for moving has begun. And if we take a look at this notification above, you can see the move is happening along with a progress bar for status. And remember, this VM is named Web03, was running on node 24. And if we look over here and switch on over, you can see, in fact, it's already noticed that it's been submitted to move to 27. And if we look over here, we can see, in fact, it is now running on node 27. So in 2 clicks, we just moved a VM from node 24 to node 27, all using the hyper-converged cluster manager in Windows Admin Center.
So that was easy management of hyper-converged infrastructure, virtual machines, and live migration via the Windows Admin Center, all from a browser, which is really cool. What are we doing for enabling hybrid scenarios?
Again, Windows Admin Center is the future of Windows Server management and is also key to our hybrid integration. We've had virtual machine replication for many releases, so you can replicate between your sites. However, many of you don't have a secondary site or would prefer to retire the costly second site that you currently have and use Azure as your DR target. With Windows Admin Center, we've made business continuity easier than ever. Let me show you. Here I am in Windows Admin Center in the Virtual Machines tool with a list of VMs. I want to replicate this first VM named Hano 17093 to Azure. The first thing I do is select the VM and go to the More option and select Setup VM Protection. Since this is the first time I'm configuring Azure Replication, I need to associate this VM with Azure Site Recovery, so I'm prompted to sign into Azure. After logging in, I set up ASR in a couple of steps. I choose my subscription in the Azure location. Next, I choose an existing storage account or create a new one like I'm doing here, and that's it. You'll notice in the upper right-hand corner, there's a notification letting me know registration is happening and when it's successfully set up. If I go back to the VM and select More, you'll notice there's now an option to protect the VM, which I'm going to select. and I get a chance to double check the location and the storage account and click Protect VM. Once again, you see the notification window appearing telling me it's enabling protection for this VM, and now it's replicating. It's really that easy.
Right, so now you've started that migration. What does it look like in Azure?
That's a great question. Let's actually log into Azure. Let's go to the Recovery Services Vault and take a look. Here, we can choose the subscription. And in fact, here you can see there is the VM replicating up in Azure.
Wow.
Just like that.
Wow, cool stuff, Jeff. And the combination of Windows Admin Center and Azure really does provide a very powerful hybrid solution. But are there any limitations around the guest? Does it need to be Windows? Can it be Linux?
There aren't any limitations on the guest. Windows, Linux, it doesn't matter. VM replication is transparent to the guest.
Great stuff. Now, let's switch gears and talk about security. Windows Server 2016 represented a huge investment in security, but how are things improving in Windows Server 2019 for security?
You're right, Matt. Windows Server 2016 introduced a number of security technologies such as virtualization-based security, credential guard, remote credential guard, control flow guard, device guard, just-in-time administration, just-enough administration, and that's just to name a few of the security features. However, one big feature and very popular one is shielded VMs. Shielded VMs literally turns a virtual machine into a black box to protect against rogue admins and to protect VMs that accidentally get into the wild from being compromised. In Windows Server 2019, we are now adding shielded VM support for Linux guests.
Cool, can we take a look?
Absolutely. So if you've seen shielded VMs before, this should look familiar. Here I've got a few VMs, including this SQL server, and in fact, you can see its thumbnail below. By double-clicking on the thumbnail, an admin can bring up a console window to connect directly to it. Notice I also have a Linux VM as well, but this one is shielded. You can see when I click on it, no thumbnail appears, and when I double-click on it, it requires me to use an authenticated connection, just like that. If I try to access the virtual hard disk directly, I can't even mount it, even though I'm a full admin on this server. This Linux VM is protected because it's a shielded VM. Thus, it's a black box to everyone but the Gesso administrator. And in fact, you can see this drive is blocked by BitLocker drive encryption. To open this, you need to unlock it first.
So are there any other security investments we should mention?
Yes, in Windows Server 2016, we included Defender for the first time. The feedback from adding Defender has been so overwhelmingly positive that we're doing even more here in Windows Server 2019, which now includes Windows Defender Advanced Threat Protection and Defender Exploit Guard to prevent against ransomware attacks and more.
So a great overview of the latest updates to Windows Server 2019. Thank you so much for joining us, Jeff. Where can folks learn more?
Please join the Windows Insiders Server Program. Download the Windows Server 2019 preview and also check out the free Windows Admin Center for your Windows Server management at the link shown.
And of course, keep checking back on Microsoft Mechanics for the latest in tech updates. Thanks for watching.